Jimmy, we're live.
Good day, everyone. You're all welcome to today's live session. Good day, everyone. We're all welcome to our live session. Sorry, just a second. Okay. Good day, everyone. You're all welcome to today's live session. Just to mention, yesterday we were actively watching or reading through the YouTube chat, and we got quite a number of feedback from people about the way this week has been. Just to note that this is the first cohort, so we would definitely have a lot of room for improvement. We're taking note of every single feedback that we're getting so far, and we would improve on it as we go on with the program. So we'll continue from where we left off. From where we left off yesterday, we ran through the backend courses. We talked about PHP and Python. Today, we're going to continue with Node.js as promised, and Idris is on the call to take that. So Idris, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Good day. I am Idris. I'll be tutoring the Node.js track. I will share my screen with you guys now to see the slide that I've prepared, and then from the slide, we would also move on to a proper coding session. So stay with me. Enjoy the ride. Abigail, can you quickly enable screen share on this meeting?
It's done.
And yes, it is. So share and present. So here's a short slide I've prepared. Let's go with it, and then we'll move deeply as we go on. So introduction to backend JavaScript with Node.js. So before we move on into Node.js deeply, it's much benefit for us to master what JavaScript as a language is about. Because for this cohort, we are not making any assumptions. We are trying to take this course like from scratch. So for you to be able to do Node.js properly, you have to actually know what JavaScript is. So JavaScript is a versatile language used for coding in multiple environments. It runs on several machines and several devices. JavaScript, our focus will be to ensure that we know the difference. So JavaScript also runs on the front end and runs on the back end. So our focus for this track is for backend JavaScript. The syntax. the syntax and semantics are the same. So for whether it is running on the front end or it's running on the back end, it's all the same JavaScript, which is one of the advantages of taking Node.js. And the differences that you have are basically in the APIs that is available on the front end and the ones that are available on the back end. All of these are things we will cover later on. So the syntax just looks like this shortcode example that I have here, where it shows you how a variable is defined in JavaScript. A variable basically is something that holds a value in memory. So this is an example. So I have let first name equals Marian. So Marian there is a value, first name is a variable. And the let is called a keyword in JavaScript. So we'll look at this shortly. So this is how like a short syntax of JavaScript looks like. This is just an overview. I'll tell you about what all of these actually do. And so talk is cheap, right? So let's see some code. So I would go out of this presentation slide now and into my IDE. Basically, I will be using Sublime Text as my editor here, and I have a small terminal. So let's clear this out. So we begin fresh. So I have a short terminal on the right-hand side here. This enables me to run things instantaneously. After we code on the right, and then run it on the left. We code on the left, sorry, this is Sublime Text here, and run it on the right to see what actually happens. So for this, we'll be doing some basics about JavaScript to see how things actually work in JavaScript, how you use JavaScript to achieve your goals and objectives while coding. So first off, I'll start with variable definitions. So like we saw earlier in the slide, that there are certain things called variables, and they are part of, they are actually a very essential part of programming, because variables are basically what holds information for you while you manipulate them and do stuff with them. So let's define a variable. Let's see how a variable is defined. So if I want to define a variable, I would say let, and my variable, I probably want to define a first name variable. So I say let first name equals.
Hi, Idris. We're just seeing your slides. We can't see the code.
Oh, sorry. That's let me quickly reshare that. So I've stopped sharing. So I guess you can see the code now, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So as I was saying, I am defining a variable called first name, and that variable sorry, that variable is called first name. There's a keyword here called let, which I want to use to instantiate the variable. So I have let first name equals, so the value that we want first name to hold is what would include here. So I want first name to include my first name, which is Idris, and last, we could probably have another variable called last name. Say let last name equals, wow. So what can we do with these variables? So it is necessary for us to be able to see what we've defined and then be able to do stuff with it. So one of those things that you probably use a lot when you're coding is a method for you to show what you have done, what is inside a variable in the terminal. So let's say you want to output the content of a variable on a terminal. What you use is a function or a method known as console.log. So this log is a method that is existing on the console property. So when I say console.log first name, and then we go back to our terminal to quickly see the results. So here's my terminal. I want to show the content of what I have typed in my text editor. So I say Node. So I would show you exactly how to install Node and do this on your own, but this is for you to see the syntax and see it in operation. So I have a file called JS Playground. So by calling Node, which is the Node environment to run a JS file, a JavaScript file, say Node Playground.js, I get Idris. So this shows in the console after, as a result of what I have run, what I have written, which is console.log first name. So let's go back to our code and see how we can do other things. So there are a lot more things that can be done. So I can also decide that I want to show both first name and last name on the same line. I say first name plus some space plus last name, and then I save. I'm going back to my terminal. Sorry, I have to keep switching slides. If we run this again, I have this flower. Now it's a combination of both the first name and the last name. So let me quickly do a short fix here to make sure that both my terminal and the slide can show on the same screen. Let's see if that would be possible.
You could just share your whole screen so that we can see everything you're doing.
Yeah, so I guess you can see my entire screen now.
Yes.
Abby, can you quickly confirm that? Okay, great. So now we can see exactly what we run, run what we've written and run it in real time. So now what I have done here essentially is that I have defined two variables, first name, last name, and I have outputted the content of my variable on the console. So I have actually run what I have written, and this has given me a result. Again, we could do a bit more. So let's say we define an entire sentence. Let's a cat in stitching time, sorry. Time says 9. A stitch, not a snitch. Sorry about that. Saves 9. Let's sentence equals stitching time saves 9. And I want to see the content of sentence. All I have to do again is console.log and say sentence. When I run this, I have to save first. So I do Control S. So for Sublime Text, you can also come up here and click Save. Then we run this in the terminal. I do the same command, and then I have reduce lawal, is teaching time, save 9. So this is a simple example of how you can define variables and do something with them. We'll also look at more examples of how you can actually do something with variables. And then you would notice that at the top here, I have something called variable declarations, which you are not seeing in the terminal when I run stuff. So when I run the code, you don't see variable definitions as part of the results. That is because this up here is called a comment. So a comment in JavaScript is just something, it's just a text that you add to the piece of code to probably narrate what is going on or to explain to other developers who might be working on the same code base with you to explain that the reason for your logic. A comment basically doesn't run as part of the code. It is just there for explanatory purposes. So we can move on to the next item I have here. So to make this a bit more concise, I'm going to comment out all of this so that we would focus on the contents of the next one. So a control slash, that is CTRL plus slash on your keyboard helps you instantaneously comment out pieces of code. So CTRL plus slash, you guys should take note of that, I may ask. Now, on the next item we have here is outputting information on the console. We've already seen how to do that with the first set of example up here. Console.log is something that you probably get very much used to when you are programming in JavaScript, because it's very useful. It's something that helps you even while you are probably trying to look for a piece of code that is not properly written or a bug within your code. So when I say bug, it means, pieces of code that are not working as expected. So console.log is something even experienced developers use. I know I use it on the job constantly to help me output what exactly is going on behind the scenes so I can make better informed decisions while running my code. So outputting information on the console, we've seen console.log, which can basically output anything you pass into it. So if I say console.log, I am happy. If I run my code, I'm happy in the terminal. So let me quickly clear this. There's a command to clear. And you shouldn't worry too much about this setup. I'll give you like full information about the editor to use, how to install your editor, how to install Node.js itself, and all of that. So this is introduction into what you can do with Node and JavaScript. So more things that you can also output in the console. Let's say I have an array of items. We'll come back to what arrays are. There are other console methods like console.table. So if I pass in an array of items, some of you might be familiar, some might not. There's no problem, would cover them. And I say A, B, and C, basically like a list of items. And I do console.table, I save this by clicking save. I can also use Control S, which is what I mostly do. And I run this code again in terminal. I get a nice looking display of the items in the table, so in the table format. So this is just another method we can use. So I'm going to clear all of this. So console is clean. So that is about how much would cover for this case in outputting information on the console. So let's move over to arithmetic operations. So in JavaScript, let me quickly comment this out so it doesn't disturb us going down. So in JavaScript, you could do arithmetic operations just like you do them on a regular calculator. So let's say we have two numbers. I'll say let's call the first number equals to 12. Let's second number equals 24. And let's say we want to add up this number. So let me name this addition. I see I use the comments there just to explain that part of the code. I want to say let result equals first number plus second number. Now, you would remember that we use this plus at the top of the code when we're talking about variable definitions. So this part of the code here, we use plus to basically concatenate both variables, that is to join them together and bring them out in the one output. The kind of plus here is still the same plus here, but they function differently. So the data types would discuss data types next. So data types are different and they determine the kind of operations that you can perform on them. So the data types that we have here is number. So how do we know it's number? Basically, that's what we assign to the variable. 12, here we are assigning to the first number is a number. How is it different? So if I had done quotes 12, this looks like a number to a human being, but to the JavaScript engine, this is now called a string. It is no longer a number. So those are nuances of difference we'll cover very soon. So I'll turn this back to 12 and then save. Okay, so we want to see what our output looks like. So console.log is also a good thing to use. Console.log, the results. So we want to see an output of the results. So I say file, save, then we go back to the code, the terminal, and then run the contents of this file. I say node. So I'm using the upper key. So let me just type it out again. I say node. The name of the file, I called it JS Playground, and I use tab to complete it there. So if I say enter, now we have a problem. So this is good. Abby, I don't know if you could. Okay, not yet. So the reason why this failed is that we have things up here which we didn't comment out. And this file name, first name, you could see an arrow pointing upwards within all of these gibberish errors. Is that there is something wrong at this top. So the arrow is pointing exactly to where the first issue is determined. There can be numerous issues within your code, but the arrow starts from where the error begins from. And we could see something here saying reference error. Reference error, first name is not defined. So this tells you exactly that something is wrong. First name is not defined means that this variable called first name, which we are including in console.log here, is nowhere to be found. The variable itself was never defined, which is the purpose of when we say variable definition. So you have to define a variable, and how you do that is by using the let keyword, which we have already seen. So if I enable this and save, this code will still throw some error, but let me clear this and then run the code again. Second error. Notice that it now says again, last name is not defined, okay? And that little arrow pointing upwards is telling us where the second error is detected. So which means we have to define last name. So when we uncomment this and save, you would notice that the code would run properly. Yes, it ran properly. So it is like, wow, which is this first console log, and then there's 36, which is basically what we wanted to run initially. So let me comment this out because this is not our focus right now. So save. So I go back to the code. So we're looking at arithmetic operations. So let me run arithmetic operations again. If I say no playground.js, yes, 36, which is the result of 12 plus 24. You might ask, can we do subtractions? Yeah, of course. So first number minus last number. Let's try that and see what we get. Save. Node playground.js. We get minus 12, which is correct. I've cleared the input there so we could see more things. Can we do multiplication? Yeah, we can. Just use the star key, usually on the number 8 on your keyboard. I save. Let's see the results. 288. That's correct. What can we do? Can we do division? So I wrote this for addition, so let me write them all out. So plus, I'm just going to copy this. See, so for subtraction now, subtraction to V, subtracting this should give us the answer for division. Let's see what division can give us. And then for multiplication, we could also multiply that with this. So I'm going to run the code to see all of this. Something is wrong. Yes, so this is a good error for us to understand. Now I have let first number equals 12, let second number equals 24. And down here below, I have let first number equals 12, let second number equals 24 again. While this will fail is exactly what this error is telling us. Syntax error, identifier first number has already been declared. Yes, so in JavaScript, when you declared a variable, when you declared a variable with the let keyword, wherever else you want to use that same variable within the same body of code, you cannot use the let anymore. You just, if you want to reassign this to another variable, you can reassign it, but you cannot say let on that same variable anymore. So in this case, since all our variables are essentially the same number, so we can delete this for this, delete this for this, and delete this for this. So we have only one point of declaration and 4 operations going on them. So after deleting, I save, and then I clear the console so we can see properly. And then I run the code again, and then I get another error. Okay, so at this point, it's saying, let's notice this error again. This says identifier result has already been declared. That is because I have declared result at the top here. And the same error is showing up when I declare result here, when I declare result here, and when I declare result here. So for me to reuse the variable called result, so I have to just remove the let from it because it has already been declared. So there's no need to say let again. So I remove let, and I remove let here, and then I save, and then clear. Let's hope all works fine, and then run. Okay, so I have all the numbers 36 minus 12, 0.5, and 288, which is as a result of an addition, subtraction, division, and a multiplication operation. So these are some of the things that can be done. You can also do some nice mathematics with this. You can do modulus of a number. Modulus basically means the remainder of a number. If you remember this part of maths, so when you divide two numbers, the remainder basically is the modulus. So to do that with JavaScript, all you need to do, say we have result already defined. So we'll say result equals first number and the modulus. So the percentage sign that you know very well is used as the modulus operator. So it is not like 10% or 12% as in this case. No, this is first number modulus second number, which means first number is 12, second number is 24, first number, which is 12 modulus 24. Console.log the results and then save. So let's see what this gives. It might be easier for me to append what it is here. So I'm going to put a string saying modulus. Modulus is this. Append it to the results, and then I run node. Now we see modulus is 12. So these are some basic arithmetic that can be done with JavaScript. So when you have, say, you want to build a calculator, you want to build things that require calculations, basically, JavaScript has got you covered. So let's move on to comparison operations. So in JavaScript, you can also compare things, compare numbers, compare the value of items. So I'm going to comment this all out a regular way we know how, and save so it doesn't disturb some of the next operations that we want to do. So comparison, we have different comparison operators. We have the equal to sign as the double equal sign. We have the triple equal sign. We have the greater than or equal to sign. We have greater than sign. We have the less than sign. We have the less than or equal to. Basically, the regular comparison operators that you probably need in your code. So let's see how all of these are used and what impact they add to your code. So let's imagine I have two strings. Let's define two strings now. I say let's first name equals, so let me use password. So this is something common with you go to websites, they ask you to enter the password the first time and then ask you to enter the password the second time to confirm if they are both the same, and then somehow they're able to define, they're able to detect that the first password is not the same as the second password. So how do they do this? So this is an application of that. So let's say first password equals secret key. Let's second password equals a secret key. Now we want to decide if first password is the same as second password before we let the user in. what we can do is say if.
Hey, Idris, very quick one. Please let's just try to round up after this final part of the presentation.
Okay, absolutely. So, hey guys, so this means that we'll be learning more of this when you come for the backend classes in Node.js. So let me quickly show you what this does. It's interesting. So if first password equals second password, we want to say an if. This if here that you have here, probably a new syntax for you, is a way to ask the computer that do something when this condition here evaluates to true. So if first password equals second password, we want to say console.log password is correct. If this is not the case, then we have another keyword called else. We tell the computer to console.log password do not match. And we save, and then we run this with a node and within the playground file and enter. Oh, password do not match. Why don't they match? Yeah, of course, they do not match because secret key is not the same thing as a secret key. So let's modify this to match and save. If I run this again, password is correct. So this is an application you see in web forms where you enter your password twice just to verify that you actually know what you want to type, and then they're able to detect that one password is not the same as the other password. So this is a way that they basically do that logic. So we see something very simple that you can also try on your own. So what I'll do for you guys is the code that we've written here will be part of my slide that I'll share with you later on for you to go through this and also try your hands on it. So I'll show you how to include how to install Node.js basically by going to nodejs.org. I don't know if you can squeeze that one in. Abigail, I'm sorry. So if you quickly go to nodejs.org, you'd see the website there where you could basically download for your operating. So I use Linux. It automatically detects my operating system, and you can download your version for either the current or the LTS. Both are fine. So I will include this in my slide and to give you a brief rundown of how to install and set yourself up and start to have a hands-on experience on JavaScript. And then for subsequent classes, we'll go in depth to tell you about Node.js in itself, the type of what it is, which is basically a runtime, and then how you can use it to build backend applications. Thank you very much. I'll be taking your questions now.
Thank you so much, Idris. That was a nice one. So I took note of a couple of questions while you were presenting. If there are questions, please drop them in the YouTube chat. I'll be checking right about now. Okay, so someone asked, is JavaScript the same as Java, or are they two different languages?
Java and JavaScript are entirely different languages. They are not related in any way. So the name might sound confusing for people, but JavaScript is entirely different from Java. So it's a different, Java is also a backend language, but it is entirely different from JavaScript essentially.
Thank you very much. Another asks, I think you explained it during your presentation, but please just explain this for further to make it more clearer. So it says, what is Sublime Text?
Okay, so this editor that I have here on my screen is basically, it's called a text editor. This is Sublime Text. Sublime, so let me basically spell it out, Sublime Text. So you basically use it for typing your code, to write your code, and it provides such an easy to use environment that helps you write code, and also to see what you've written. So you can also install a couple of plugins that helps you with your code, to give you suggestions and all of that. So Sublime Text is basically a text editor that you can install to run your code. But basically for this program, this is, I use this for a sample. So basically for this program, we'll be using VS Code, which is another text editor, but a richer text editor that gives you a whole lot of advantages and things to use when you are coding. So Sublime Text, VS Code, and all of that they are basically tools that you use to write your code. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Finally, we're going to take just one more question. I saw what, okay, it says, is a laptop or desktop necessary to run these applications, or are there mobile options as well?
Yeah, I know of some mobile operations that can help, but I'd advise that a user has a laptop, especially when it comes to things like Node.js. You need a laptop or a desktop to help you run. So this will be working with server-side code, and you need a laptop basically to run server-side code. But to practice JavaScript, if it is to advance your JavaScript, then there are a couple of apps that can help you with that. You could use them to quickly do some typing on mobile, and they will show you your results. So if this is something you are very much interested in, I can do a quick search for you to look for some apps that you can basically use to train yourself on JavaScript on mobile. But if you are going to go deep down into backend programming, you need a laptop or a desktop for that.
Okay, thank you very much, Idris. Thank you for the presentation,
Thank
the
you. Thank you for having
explanation.
me.
Everything was just great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we would, if there are more questions for Idris, please drop your questions in the mental help desk or the backend channel, and Idris and other backend tutors will be available to answer your questions. Idris, you can start sharing.
Yeah, right. Thanks.
Okay, so we'll be moving on to front end, and Jimmy is available to take that. Jimmy, please go ahead. Jimmy, are you there?
Hi, Abby. Apologies, I forgot to unmute myself. So hi, can you hear me, Abby?
Yes, we can. We're looking at your Zoom right now.
Okay, all right. So I was saying before I, got to know that I was muted, that in the last class we were talking, the last time I was on here, that was like 2 days ago, we're talking about front-end development and just a brief intro into front-end development. So today we're going to take it a little deeper. The three languages, the three major technologies that are available for front-end development. We're going to take a bit of a closer look into them so that we have a bit more knowledge, a bit more understanding, especially for those who are not yet sure of what tracks they want to pick. So I trust that this will be quite explanatory and informative. All right, so a front-end developer is a person, who is tasked with implementing web designs, using, like I mentioned, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. The person is after we had the UI UX design session yesterday, and after the UI UX person is done with their designs and all that, the next person is the front end developer. They are tasked with bringing to life everything that the designer has done, and also not forgetting what the backend person has worked on. So they stand in between, in a sense, like a bridge, to merge both the design and the backend, what's available on the backend. Take a site like Facebook, for example. When you interact with Facebook, for every person who logs on, and for every time that you log on, what you see is different because of what's happening on the back end. So the front end developer is tasked with showing accurate information on the front end, so that person A doesn't log in and then see someone else's information, right? And then the front end developer is also tasked with user experience of a site, how well the user is able to use what has been done. User experience cuts across every type of user available, right? A lot of times we make the mistake of creating sites that are not really accessible. So some people use it and it's like, oh, it's fine. And then somebody else, probably somebody with a disability or someone who is using a different device or something like that, tries to access that same site, and then the experience is not uniform. That's something that the front-end developer needs to take note of when creating the site. So anybody should be able to get onto the site and use it and enjoy the same experience, irrespective of, who they are, where they're accessing from, and any disabilities they might or might not have. Now, front-end tools that you need for front-end development, unlike a lot of back-end languages, you really don't need to do so much installations. You don't need to install NodeJS, you don't need to install a language, you don't need to do so much of all that. You just need your code editor, your browser, your developer tools, and Git for versioning, amongst other things. Your code editor is where you write your code. There are different code editors possible. There are different code editors available. Visual Studio Code is a very popular one, and a lot of people use VS Code because it provides quite a lot of functionalities. There's a lot of functionality that comes with VS Code, but that does not mean you cannot use other editors. Whatever works for you is fine. Your browser is important. Of course, if you don't have a browser, you can't see what you've done, but it's also important, right, that when you create stuff and you're able to view it on your browser, you need to consider other users, because not everybody uses, the exact same browser. Some people browse with Safari, some people use Google Chrome, there's Microsoft Edge, there's Internet Explorer, there is Brave, and then quite a lot of other browsers like that. So it's important for a front-end developer to ensure that whatever they do is compatible across browsers to the best of your abilities. I say to the best of your abilities because there are some functionalities that don't work across certain browsers. Internet Explorer is an example. Internet Explorer is it gives quite a different experience, for a lot of things that you build. You find out as you are building that you try to add a functionality, and then it tells you, oh, Internet Explorer cannot do it this way. You have to find a way to make it work. So the front-end developer has to work on that. Cross-browser compatibility is very important. Developer tools give you access to see. It makes debugging easy, right? So you've created your site, but something is just not looking the way it should or the way you anticipated. Developer tools help you to debug, find out, okay, what exactly is happening, what's causing what, and how you can, it helps you to fix issues. One of the most common developer tools available is Google Developer Tools. There's also one, Firefox is also quite popular too, but those are just two. There are other ones you can use. Then Git is for versioning. Git is for sharing your code. So you've created, you've worked on something, you've worked on a project, but you need to probably share it with someone. You need to keep different versions, so that as you keep working along, sometimes there are times when you need to revert back to a previous thing you have done. So assuming you work on a web page and then something is breaking and you can't really figure it out, but you look at it and you're like, oh, when I worked on this thing yesterday, it wasn't broken, it was fine, but today it is broken. You can always, versioning tools like Git give you the ability to, revert back to previous code. Like you can move beyond code and also help you to share your code with people. So these are some of the common tools that you use as a front-end developer. There are others, but as we go along, we'll get into that over time. All right, so a very brief HTML intro. HTML is known as a markup language. You use it to create structure. Imagine like your skeletal system. It frames up what your body looks like. It makes your body look solid. Without the bones, it's just blood and flesh. So it structures your page. It tells you what comes after this, what comes next, and all that. Now, HTML is made up of elements. Every website that you open, every site that you go on, on the internet is made up of HTML elements. HTML elements contain what we call tags and their contents. A tag and the content that it carries together is called an HTML element. For example, if you take a look at this, you have something here called a P tag. The P is shortened from paragraph. It's a paragraph tag, and it has content in here, and then there is another tag here that closes this. It closes this element. So all of this together is one HTML element. All right. Now, it's very important in HTML, and I think some other languages too now, but in HTML, it's important that when you have an opening tag, you need to close it. Sorry about that. Whenever you have an opening tag, there needs to be a closing tag. If you don't close it, things can break, things can go bad. So for every opening tag, there has to be a closing tag. Now, examples of tags that we have in HTML, we have the HTML tag. That's like the most important, or should I say the second most important tag on any HTML page. It's what contains every part of your page. Every other element that you want to write for any web page needs to be contained in the HTML tag. If you don't put it into the HTML tag, it's not going to show up. All right, so everything needs to be in an HTML tag. Now, I just have this here, but let's keep in mind that all of these tags, once you're using them, once you're writing HTML, you have the opening tag, you have your content in it, and then you have a closing tag. A closing tag is, like we saw on the previous slide, is you simply have like a / here. If I can go back here. So you have a / and then the same tag name that you use in your opening tag, that's enclosed within your brackets. And then you have your head tag. The head tag is the first thing that goes into your HTML tag. The head tag contains a lot of data that you need on your page, but that will not show up on the page. This is what I mean. Whatever goes into the head tag will not be visible to anybody who opens that page, but it works alongside that page. So there are some other tags that go in. For example, there's a tag I didn't include here as part of these examples, but it's called the title tag. If you open up any web page on your browser and you hover on it, let me do a quick example here. So if I come here and I hover over this, if you see that little title that shows up there, it says front end intro the PPTX. That is from the title tag that was included in the head tag. So if you don't add a title tag to your head tag, you would not see this title. It's just going to be blank. So that's an example of what goes into your head tag. After your head tag, after you've closed your head tag and all of the content inside it, you have the body tag. The body tag is where any other thing that is going to show up on your page would go into. Every other content that you want to show up on the page goes into the body tag. You have your header tags, you have H1, H2, up until H6. All of them have a varying degree of size. Their sizes are varying. The biggest one is the H1 tag, and that's what you probably normally see at the top of any web page. It's always the most visible. So if you have, if you're creating a web page and you want like a header that is, that anybody would see first, like it's the most important announcement on your web page, your H1 tag is your go-to tag for that. So from H1 to H6, they go down that way in order of sizes. H1 is the biggest, H6 is the smallest. Then you have your paragraph tag, that's your P tag. You're creating content, you're creating like an article, you're creating text. Text goes into your paragraph tag, right? And then we have image tag. Now, if you notice here, unlike what we had in this previous tag where we have the opening tag and then the closing tag, the image tag here has a slash, right? A forward slash just before this bracket. That's because the image tag is something we call a self-closing tag. So it closes itself. And that's because unlike this P element, this P tag here rather, the image tag does not usually contain, have any content like this. The image tag doesn't have content in it like this. It just has attributes, so it's this way and then it closes itself, right? And then you have your anchor tag. Your anchor tag is what you use to link to different pages. That's the work of the anchor tag. So you have the anchor tag, you put your content that you want to link to, that you want to show rather. You input the attributes and all that, which we'll talk about that much later. But when you want to link to a different page, you use your anchor tag. Okay, now we have what we call HTML attributes. Every element, every tag, in HTML can have something we call attributes. The attribute is just like is what you use to add certain properties to the P tag. So there are various types of HTML attributes. This is just one. This class is one, and all it's doing is adding a name. You're saying, okay, let this P tag belong to a class called editor-notes, right? Now, this class attribute is mostly used in CSS styling. We'll get there at some point, but it's mostly used in CSS styling. But it's not the only attributes that exist. There are other types of attributes. There are ID attributes. There are source attributes. There are reference attributes, all different types of attributes that you use, but just understand that attributes are used to add properties to your HTML tag. Okay, so on this page now, we have an example of an HTML document, right? If you look closely at the top here, you have this right here. Now there's a long history behind this, but I can't get into that right now. We'll get into that later, but just understand that if you want your HTML page to display correctly, you need to have this at the top of your HTML tag. At the top of your HTML page, beg your pardon. You need to have this at the top of your HTML page, exclamation mark, doc type, HTML. It needs to start every HTML page that you write, every HTML content that you write. This needs to be at the top. And then we have the HTML tag. I remember I said that it needs to, contain every other thing that goes into your page. So you have the HTML tag here. This is the opening. Right here is the closing. And then every other thing goes into it. So you have your head tag, the head tag opened here and closed here, which is content. This is called a meta tag, right? It's a configuration that your page needs. It's also a very important content of your HTML page. It helps to display your page correctly, if I can use that word, but we'll go into meta tags much later in the course. This is your title page, your title tag. This is what shows up at that top place, at that place I showed initially on the other front end PowerPoint page I opened. All right, and this is your body, the body of the HTML page, and then this paragraph. So basically, really, this is the structure of an HTML page. This is as simple as it gets, right? If you the more complex your page is, the more goes into it, but this is like the barest, All right, so let's go into CSS. CSS is short for cascading style sheets. Cascading style sheets. It is used to style and lay out web pages. So after you've set the structure of your page, like you have here, you set the structure with HTML. CSS is what you use to add style, is what you use to add color, all of that to your page. That's what you use. It is also used to determine the font size. How big your text is, how small, do you want this item to go to the left or go to the right? All of that happens with CSS. Now, CSS is a rule-based language. What that means is CSS uses rules. You set rules for everything that you need to do. Everything in CSS is a rule. This code right here is an example of what a typical CSS rule looks like. So you have selectors in a simple CSS rule. You have a selector, you have your curly braces, and then you have declarations. For example, in this case here, the selector is your H1, right? So you're selecting what a selector is you're picking something from your HTML tag and from your HTML page, and saying, this is what I want to style right now. So if I want to style this page, this P paragraph here, for example, I could simply say P here instead of H1. Okay, so that's your selector. And then your curly braces. Your curly braces need to open and close. If you don't put your curly braces, your CSS style sheet will break. That style is not going to show up. And it could also break styles that you're writing after that. You also need to close it. That's very important. And then you have declarations within that curly brace. Each declaration is a combination of your CSS property. Here you have color, it's a CSS property, your colon, and then what you want to set that property to, and then it ends with a semicolon. It's very important. Your declaration is your CSS property, you have a colon after that, then what value you're specifying for that property, and a semicolon after that. Okay. Now, CSS, when we say cascading style sheets, what it simply means is it goes in order from top to bottom, right? If I'm styling a page, by the time I add my CSS, the browser goes to the CSS, it picks the first style at the top of the CSS page and then implements that, then goes to the next style and implements that. If there are two conflicting styles on a CSS sheet, the browser would always pick the most recent rule. Let me take that again. If there are two conflicting rules on a CSS sheet, the browser would always pick the most recent rule. For example, I have this H1 tag here. I have this element here. I've added a class attribute to it for title. And then the content, my name is Jimmy. Now, if I have this all of these three rules within a CSS sheet, right? And I run this in a browser, with this HTML. What color do you think? What color do you think it will pick? Based on what I just said. Okay, I was hoping to get like some answers in the on the video stream, but that's fine. So when the browser sees styles like this, right, it looks at, okay, you have an h1 tag, you want to color it red, and then font size this value, and it says okay, and then it goes again, it sees another style for the same h1, same property you're trying to set, color, font size. At this point right here,
there are answers in the YouTube chat.
Oh, okay, let me check that now. All right, yes, so I can see a lot of people are getting the answers correctly. So let me just explain for those who don't quite understand what's happening. So if the browser sees like these three set of rules, right, it goes to the first, it sees this, then it gets here, and it sees, oh, color purple, font size this. At this point, this style here, this style overrides this first style because it's the most recent style. Okay, because it's the most recent, this styling here would always override the first one. But then we get here and we see h1.title. What does that mean? Now, this attribute that was added here for class with a value of title, in CSS, this is how I would represent it. So the dot here tells CSS that, oh, it is class you're looking for, right? Go to the HTML page, look for a tag that is h1, look for an h1 tag that has a class attribute of title, right? That is what this tells the browser. Now imagine I had this color value here set to maybe pink or white, right? This is what the browser would pick. And the reason is because this selector here is more specific than simply saying h1. Okay, so with these three sets of rules, the browser would go to the page and pick any h1 tag and give it, this color at this point. But then it gets here and this specifies and says not just the h1 tag, but any h1 tag that has the class title, right? So if I have, assuming I had like 3 h1 tags here, but only one of them had title, the other 2 h1 tags would pick whatever color is here, because it's the most recent. But the one that has class title would pick this because the selector here is very specific. Okay, so that's what I mean when we say that the most recent and the most specific rule always wins. The most recent and the most specific rule will always win. So you need to take that into consideration when you are writing your CSS style sheet. You need to be careful of what comes last and be sure that it's not negating a rule that you have set before somewhere on that page. All right. Now, JavaScript. Idris has taken us on a bit of JavaScript today, so I would not even delve into this. But on the front end bits, what he tried to go from the back end angle, but on the front end bits, JavaScript enables you to interact with your web pages. So you are able to click on a form, you are able to scroll on a page, you're able to, okay, you click on a button on a page and then it takes you to another page. Those little things, you type your name into a form, you submit, it shows you a notification, or your form, your details have been successfully submitted. Those things, they are made possible by JavaScript. Okay, JavaScript also helps you to take what the back end developer has done on the back end and be able to display it correctly on the front end. So you can have a website, right, that is just HTML and CSS. It's what we call a static web page. It doesn't do anything, it's, you have the structure, you have the layouts that CSS will give, you have the styling, and it's just there. It's giving you information, but it's static. For you to move from having that kind of site to a site that you can interact with, or a site that can work with a back end, something that has been done on the back end, you need JavaScript, right? And it's one of the places that frameworks come in. Frameworks like React, Vue.js, Angular, Svelte, and others help you to, they make that process a bit more seamless, so to say, because back when JavaScript just started, back when the web was still fresh, it was a bit, not a bit, it was very difficult, really, to have that interaction. Things were just not very easy to implement. And that's when jQuery came in. I think I saw a question on the Slack workspace earlier today where someone was asking about if we would learn jQuery, and someone said, oh, jQuery is outdated. That's quite correct. jQuery came out at a point where we didn't have React, we didn't have Vue.js, we didn't have all those JavaScript frameworks. So jQuery was like I'll call it a library that made those interactions a lot easier. So by the time we started having frameworks and all that, they were doing pretty much what jQuery was doing, but they had, because they were created to do that job, and others, they just sort of phased out jQuery. So your React, your Vue.js, your Angular, and so on would do what jQuery would do. All that jQuery really was doing was allowing you to update content on your page dynamically. That's the word, dynamically. So if I was to log into Facebook with my credentials, what I would see would be different from if Abby or Idris were to log onto their Facebook accounts, right? The content is being changed dynamically. There's nobody imputing the content and say, oh, Jimmy is logging in now, or let me update her content. No, all of it happens dynamically. So something like that was what jQuery was doing. But now with the advent of other JavaScript frameworks, jQuery has phased out a bit. I say a bit because there are sites that exist today that because of when they were built, they used jQuery back then, and because of maybe they just didn't want to do that switch. They left the jQuery on the site. So developers who would need to maintain those sites would need to understand jQuery in order to be able to get that job done. But if you don't have such an issue, then JavaScript frameworks like React, Vue.js, Angular will do the job that you need to do, right? But before we get into frameworks on this in this training, we're going to attempt to do a lot of that stuff that those frameworks will do with vanilla JavaScript, with something called the DOM, the Document Object Model, I believe now. We're going to try to do that just so that we can understand, vanilla JavaScript and how it works on the web. It's beautiful. I mentioned on Tuesday when I gave my first presentation that as much as it is necessary to learn frameworks, it's always best to understand the fundamentals of a language very, very well. It gives you the ability to manipulate the language to suit your purpose as much as possible. Once you understand a framework, once you understand a language well enough, once you understand its fundamentals well enough, right, working with the framework is easier. And then when you're not even able to use the framework, because you may not be able to use the framework everywhere, there are companies that don't use React, there are companies that don't use Vue, there are companies that use their in-house tools, that is not React, that is not Vue, it's not Angular. So if you don't understand JavaScript fundamentally, working in such places, or doing stuff at that time becomes more difficult. So we're always going to start with JavaScript fundamentals by the time we get into the classes, before we then move into the React framework that we'll be using at this time.
Hey,
Okay,
Jimmy.
so that's it. That's all.
Awesome. You have a ton of questions waiting for you.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Stop sharing. Thank you.
All right.
So let me get the questions real quick.
Okay.
Someone asked a question on vanilla JavaScript. They asked if vanilla is a language.
Vanilla is not a language. Sorry. So vanilla means, when you have ice cream, right? The most common flavor of ice cream is vanilla. By the time you start going into other flavors, it's the complexity increases. So vanilla JavaScript is just saying pure JavaScript. Nothing added. It's pure JavaScript.
Okay, thank you very much. There are more of comments than questions.
Oh, okay.
So if there are more questions for Jimmy, everyone really followed through with your presentation. So they've been conversing a lot on it. So thank you very much. If there are questions, please drop them in the mental help desk or the front end channel, and she will be available to answer the questions.
All right.
So that's a wrap for front end. We'll be moving over to mobile, and to start us off, Abdul will start us off on the presentation for mobile.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Abdul here. So I'll be taking us through the first presentation for mobile. So I'm sharing my screen now.
Please speak up a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so I'm sharing my screen now, and then I'll start off the presentation. Yeah, so this is a build up on the last class we had for mobile. So we'll be going in depth into building native for Android. So the outline, we're going to look at things like what's like the intro to Kotlin and Java, comparison of the two languages, code samples of the two languages, and a lot of other things. So let's get into it. So Java, Kotlin, they are both languages that are still very, very useful outside the scope of mobile. So let's talk a bit around that. Java is a language that is very versatile. You're able to use Java for mobile development, for backend development, and also for enterprise development. So for mobile development, you can use Java for Android development. For backend, you can use Java through Spring Boot, which is a framework for backend development. And then you can use Java FX to build enterprise application. You have Java EE for building desktop applications. And the very fun thing about Java is it's a language that allows you to build once and you're able to run everywhere. The same single piece of code, the same results you got from that single build can be run on all the platforms that are able to compile and use Java. So about Kotlin. Kotlin is a statically typed cross-platform language. So why cross-platform? Because Kotlin, just like Java, or because the entire idea of building Kotlin was the builders wanted a language that was as fast as Java, but without all the restrictions that Java has. So that's where Kotlin came from. So it works very well with Java. You can use it to build for backend. You can compile Kotlin to JavaScript. So you're able to use Kotlin on several platforms. So now, play it down to what the major focus of this talk is, Android development. So why did the Android team decide to go for Java at the point? So at that point when Android picked up Java to be the language or the flagship language for Android, Java was really easy to learn. There were a lot of developers already using Java, so it was like a no-brainer. Like, we have a lot of people here already, so let's focus on that. It's an object-oriented programming language. It's secure, so that means since like a lot of people were already using it, security considerations were already like put in place, so that it's not easy to kind of like break your code. As say WhatsApp, which is a mobile application now, if it was easy to break the code, then a lot of chats we have privately with our loved ones, friends, and all that will not really be possible. Then also because of the fact that Java is a language that you can run on any platform that can compile Java, it was really platform independent. You didn't need to have a laptop, or you could run it over the internet. You could run it from your desktop. You can also use it on mobile using the Java 2E, or I can't remember the name, the one that was previously used to build mobile applications before Android. So the versions of Java that is used by Android, Java 8 and Java 7. So if Java was already doing the work and everything was fine, then why did you need Android? And why did you need Kotlin for Android development? So Kotlin, like I said earlier, is a cross-platform, tactically typed general-purpose programming language. It has type inference. So the features of Kotlin that made it like the perfect shift from Java is it is idiomatic, means you, as we'll see later on, like Kotlin code is easy to read and follow along. And it's something that works seamlessly with Java in the sense that you can, in the same application, have some part of your code written in Java and the other part written in Kotlin, and everything works perfectly fine. It is concise, and currently it is the flagship language for Android development. It's been that it was initially announced in 2017 that it will be, and it became official in 2019. So another major concern with Java was bugs, like having bugs in your application or having your application break while people were using was like a lot more common with Java applications. Kotlin is designed to fail fast. This means that before you even run your application or build your app on a mobile device, your app will have failed several times, guiding you on where the issues are before you even run it on a device. So that made it like very good fit for a replacement for Java, coupled with several other issues around the fact that there were legal issues and all that. So real-life applications that are built with Java and or Kotlin. So companies that are big companies and popular companies that we know now that are currently using Java will be Spotify, Twitter, Cash App, Signal, and a lot of other applications. And the ones that have declared that they migrated from Java to Kotlin will be Google, Netflix, N26, Airbnb, Uber, Slack, and several other applications. Now, why I have and or here, and not just Java or Kotlin, is a lot of these apps will say they've not migrated or they've actually migrated. But the thing is, since you can have both Java and Kotlin in the same application, most of these companies will still have some part of their code written in Java and some written in Kotlin. Now, let's take a look at some code. So this is a very basic Java program. And when this is run, you get hello world printed in your console or your terminal. Now, the same code now in Kotlin, you can see I have two variants here. The one on the left, where my cursor is right now, is the same one you have on the previous slide. So it's the same as this one, but in Kotlin. And the one on the right is actually Kotlin's way of writing the same class. So why are we able to write this code and it works the same way as this one? So we can see here we have like a class, which is an object that contains now the function. So a function is this part of the code. So we have public static void main. So that's a function declaration. And then we're saying just calling this function without the parent class works the same. So the entire idea is with Kotlin, functions are first-class citizens. So that means functions can actually be used on their own without being contained in a class. Okay, so having talked about giving a brief background on the two languages and how they apply to native Android development. And when I say native Android development, this is what I'm referring to. So that means using the tools recommended by, say, the makers of Android as the first choice tool for building for their platform. So in Android, that will be Kotlin or Java. In iOS, you will have Swift as the primary recommended language for coding for iOS. So the answer to this question actually is no. Kotlin and or Java alone is not enough for Android development. You have other languages. So we have XML here and Gradle. So what will these languages help you achieve in Android? So XML helps you write the skeletal parts and also add flesh to what users see and interact with. More like the access points that users have to your applications will be written in XML. Don't get it wrong, you can actually also do that in Java and or Kotlin, but then it's easier if you use XML because at least you can see in real time what it will look like on the user's device. Now, Gradle is like the cement or that tool that helps you put together every part of your Java code, your XML code, and then gives you an application. So Gradle is a scripting language. You write all the processes required, the dependencies your app has, and all that. So let's see sample. So this is sample for XML. So you're declaring a button in your application, and then you're applying style, you're giving it an identifier and giving it all the decoration that will represent your button on the screen. We'll get to see this in an application shortly. So for Gradle, this is a code sample for Gradle, and here we have instructions on how to compile your app. So in the body here, I have written here that you have basic build setups. So this includes the version of the Android build tool you're supposed to use to build your app. In the default configuration here, you have the minimum version of Android you're targeting, the target version you're looking at, the version of your application, the name you want to give that particular version. So here we have build type. So here what it means is you can have different types of build that you want to execute. Say you want to only test your app on your device and not build for the store. So building for the store is when you're ready to release your app to the world, then you need to set a configuration that helps you build a version of
It seems we've lost Abdul for a bit there. So I guess when he joins, he would continue off with his presentation. For now, we'll just go over to cross-platform to explaining what cross-platform is about. So what Abdul did just now was to give a detailed explanation of what native Android development is about. Now let's move over to cross-platform, and I will be the one to handle that. So let me quickly share my screen.
Hello, can you guys still hear me?
Oh, Abdul is back. Okay, please, Abdul, you can round up.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So to set up your environments, you can go to this link, and I'll be sharing this resource so that you can use it to set up properly. So when you're downloading, you have to like put into consideration the system requirements, the low-end systems that you can run Android Studio on, and you have to check to ensure that your system is able to run the software. And then you follow the instruction after download, just run like a normal installation of other applications you do on your system. And then once you're done, it will guide you through the process, give you a lot of settings you can do. I wanted to do a demo, but right now, Abby, can I still squeeze something in, or the time is up?
Oh, please, you can demo, at least for 5 minutes.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so let's start a new project. Basically, when you're done installing, this is what is going to look like on your system if you're using a Mac. If not, it looks very similar on a Windows system. So this Android gives you a set of options you can choose from as your base that you want to start building from. For now, we'll just choose like a basic project and select next. So here you can give your project a name, a package name. That's what will be your unique identifier for your application on mobile devices and also on the Play Store. Select where you want it saved and your language of choice. So currently you can use either Kotlin or Java. I'll be selecting Kotlin here, and then you can finish up the process, which then gives you a project you can start working on with like a very basic starter code. So I won't be adding a lot of code here. I will just try as much as possible to explain what's already written once the build is done. Okay, so give me, Abby, this doesn't count as part of my time. It's just build time. A few seconds.
Okay.
So while the build is going on, this is a Kotlin class that describes how your code will, or how your application will behave, so to say. So you have an activity class. In Android, an activity is like the single, most basic instance in your application that a user can interact with. So here we have the default created for us to be main activity. You can go ahead yourself to create as many others as you need to build your application. So another thing to note is you don't just go into Android Studio and just start building. We'll do a lot of that during the learning process, but the ideal way is You get a set of requirements from your clients or the person giving you an app to build or yourself. You need to write all those requirements down. And then you will need access to, or someone like Charles to give you UI with very good UX for you to now build on. And then when you have all that, then you come to the software here and start implementing what you have. Okay. So here we have a couple of things that will go a lot deeper into as to what these folder structures and file structures represent in Android. But for now, let's just take a look at what this main activity connects to in XML. So if you notice, we have main activity as the name of the file here, and the corresponding XML file is activity main. Now, this is just like a convention. You don't have to always name your files the same, but it's easier if you're working in a team that you have a convention that everybody keeps to. That helps keep everything tidy and everybody's able to understand without stress. So you have a couple of options that we'll explore later on, but for now, let's look at this one. So this allows you view the XML code and what the user will see on the side. So this is the definition/declaration I said I'll be showing you on how your applications will be, where you're, like what you need to define with XML for your applications. So here we're defining a toolbar. If I'm able to run the app, so we'll see what that is.
Abdul, please could you zoom in
Yeah,
a bit?
I'm still here. Okay. Is this a bit better? Is it clearer?
A bit more, please.
Currently, Android Studio is responding to gesture. I don't know why. So explaining the parts of the application as they are. So we have this part is a toolbar for your application, which is the top purple area. And then you have a floating action button, or this is a fancy button, which is this one down here. And then you have like a web content here that we can't see, but represents what is in the middle here. So let's see what that is. So here you have a fragment that also shows content. Now you have an option as a developer to either use that interface or come here and design. So you can do drag and drop, add items into your view. So you can drag this item, drop in here. So it adds the resources, and then you can apply styling and all that. We'll go into a lot of this, like way deeper when you join the mobile track. This and a lot more is what we'll be doing, building also applications. So let me try running to see how that will behave on a device. So I'll have, say, an emulator here. So this is something that helps you build fast as a developer. So you can see things as they happen. You don't have to go and look for a physical device to build on. Android Studio allows you to spin up virtual devices like this to run your app on. You also have the option to test on physical devices to see how they will actually respond on real devices. So for now, we'll be using this so we can all see. So while that is going on, I have a couple of resources I'll be sharing with the slides that you can go around, check and play around with Kotlin, check the Android developer documentation to get familiar with a couple of things, check Google Code Labs. We'll be using a lot of this as we proceed. You can also try your hand on some Java code, like the ones we shared on the slides here. I'll be sharing the code too. You can also try Kotlin here, and then you can try out XML with this tool here. So while we wait for the build, if anyone has questions.
At the moment, there are none in the comment section. So.
Okay.
Is that going to take a while?
Yeah, so I think that will be it from me.
Okay. So I guess before the end of the program, before the end of my session, we can show the results.
Yeah. So maybe at the end we can show like a demo of how this went.
All right, that's fine. So when Abdul caught up before, I mentioned that he just gave us a very detailed explanation of what native Android development is about. So we'll be moving now to cross-platform, what it is about, and the tools that we'll be using through the course of this program. So let me share my screen. Can we all see the slide? Okay, great. So cross-platform, basically today we're going to consider a couple of things. We'll discuss the what cross-platform is about, the pros and cons. We'll also show a couple of code samples and the tools that will be required through that will be required for this particular type method of development. So, yeah, what is cross-platform? Well, in very, very simple terms, we can describe cross-platform development as creating applications that are compatible with different operating systems. Being compatible doesn't mean that you get to develop separately for Android and get to develop separately for iOS. It means you develop one thing, and when you test it on an Android device, it works smoothly, and same applies for when you test it on iOS. Notice that I just mentioned Android and iOS. That's because majorly, statistics show that most smartphones used around the world operate either on the Android operating system or the iPhone operating system. So most applications are built primarily for those two operating systems. This also has increased the need for Android and iOS developers. In a traditional application development cycle, separate developers are required for Android development and also for iOS. And there are quite a number of disadvantages to that. I'm not trying to, of course, I'm trying to sell out I'm trying to sell out cross-platform development. So I guess I should state the disadvantages for going ahead with native over cross-platform. So some of the cons are, for starters, it's it's a slow development process. What do I mean? So iOS and Android they have their own specific requirements. They have their own type of widgets, they have their own type of implementations. So the time that it would take to implement on iOS may not necessarily be the amount of time that is required to develop on Android. Hence, it kind of slows up the development process. We also have the cost. Developing for two separate operating systems definitely would mean more money being spent in development. Aside that, you need to employ separate developers to achieve for Android and iOS. There are still certain things, certain requirements for the different OS that would require more cost as opposed to cross-platform development. Then we have for the application experience, iOS has its own kind of widgets, Android has its own kind of widgets. The implementation for both, like I mentioned before, would definitely be different. So this means that the look and feel of the iOS would definitely be somewhat different from the look and feel of Android. We can see examples of this, say, for example, the Twitter app or WhatsApp. WhatsApp, in fact, a lot of people use WhatsApp. You see that the look and feel of WhatsApp is definitely different from the look and feel on of WhatsApp on iOS is different from the look and feel on Android. You would definitely be able to tell the difference that these two applications are running. This application is running on two different operating systems. So, and then we also have support. No application is perfect. There will definitely be bugs. In the case where you're developing for different operating systems separately, using separate code bases, this would mean that when you're solving a bug for iOS, solving a bug for iOS would require different skill sets and different time frames, and it's just, the difference is just very clear. So there are a ton of other cons, but let's just leave it at 4 so that we do not, I do not praise cross-platform too much on this call. So additionally, there are a ton of cross-platform tools that are used to build applications for both Android and iOS using one code base. We have React Native, we have Flutter, we have Iconic, and we have Xamarin. But through the course of this program, we would be using Flutter, not the others. Now, why Flutter? Why did we choose to use Flutter? Aside Flutter being a very new and widely accepted cross-platform tool, Flutter is developed and managed by Google. It's also open source, which means that a lot of people get to contribute. Same for React Native, but like I said, more preference to Flutter. So it's open source, so there are a ton of developers who are continuously contributing to Flutter and making it of great use to us, the mobile developers, in our development of Android and iOS applications. And it's also good to note that there is just one code base that's required for both developments. I do not need to write separate code for iOS, and I do not need to write separate code for Android. That is the whole idea of cross-platform. Now, yeah, we've praised cross-platform, we've praised Flutter, but there are also disadvantages of cross-platform development. So before I talk about the disadvantages, I'll go through the advantages. So there is cross-platform enables fast development. Fast development in that you do not, just as we mentioned before when we're talking about native, you do not need to code separately for the two operating systems. You run everything using just one code base. So when you're releasing for iOS, you can confidently release for Android since they both run using the same code. Now, Flutter also has an added feature that really aids your development process, and that is the hot reload feature. This means that you get to run your code, see the result of your code in real time. You do not need to go through a long process, starting a server or anything like that to see the result of your, to see what your code looks like. You get to see this in real time. As you're coding, you're saving, and you're seeing the effect of your code. There's also for easy maintenance. Remember I mentioned that support, when you're running separate code base for Android and iOS, the support can be a challenge. While using Flutter, maintenance is very easy in that if there's a bug, it's easy to spot it and fix on the two operating systems without having to go through a hassle. And then we also mentioned that it's just one code base for both operating systems. Now, some of the disadvantages of Flutter. Some people are really worried because Flutter is a rather new technology. It's not, it hasn't been here for a while. So people are still quite skeptical about what Flutter is about. But as people are still quite skeptical about Flutter, but Flutter is here to stay. It's open source. A lot of developers are putting their work into it. So Flutter will definitely be here for a long time. And then we also, another disadvantage of cross-platform or Flutter in this case is that when there are new features added to the native environment for iOS and Android, the features cannot be accessed immediately because it has to be integrated into the Flutter SDK and then released for us to be able to access those features, unlike when you're working with native languages. And well, I guess I repeated this here, that it is relatively new. Already covered that. So here are a couple of examples of applications that were built with Flutter. We have Alibaba.com, we have Google Ads, we have the Reflectly app, we have eBay Motors, and New York Times. There are a ton of other applications that are built using Flutter, but I thought to just limit it for the sake of this presentation. Yeah, so what does, I also forgot to mention that Flutter is powered using the Dart language. Dart was also created by the Google team. Flutter is heavy on Dart. So that is a language that you'll be coding with if you decide to go with cross-platform and for this program, Flutter. Now, here's a sample code. This is pretty much how to print or how to see hello world in your console. Through the course of the presentation, the backend tutors have mentioned what a console is. Idris showed us that during his presentation, so that is less words from me on that. So this is typically how to print hello world in your debug console in the Dart language. And like I said, Flutter runs on Dart, so would also be talking about what Dart is about. We'll be talking about functions, data types. We'll pretty much cover the Dart language as we're going through Flutter. Then here's a sample Flutter code, right? This is how to display hello world on a mobile device. This here on the right is an application that is running on an iOS simulator. So here is what enabled this to show over here. So we have the main, just like we saw in the previous slide. This is the beginning of your code. To run a Flutter app or to write that code, you need to have the main function that is pretty much the base for every code that you get to write afterwards. Now here is a sample Flutter. Here's a sample app in using Flutter. So we have the main, and then we have this widget over here. If you hear about Flutter, you'd be told that everything in Flutter is a widget. And this is an example of a widget in Flutter. So there are a ton of widgets that we're going to cover through the course of the program. This is a stateless widget, and a stateless would cover that through the course of the program. So this is an example of a widget, same for material app, same for scaffold, same for center, and same for text. There are all types of widgets that carry out different functionality. So Flutter makes development a lot easier since it already has this inbuilt widgets that are available they're available for application development, for mobile application development. Now, yeah, so this on the left produced this on the right. We're going to learn more about all of that through the course of the program. So there are development tools that are required for building your app. There are tools that are required for your mobile development. Abdul mentioned a couple of them, and he also showed you how to use, he also showed you Android Studio. You can also use VS Code for mobile application development. You can use Android Studio, IntelliJ to develop your mobile applications. Now, there are quite a number of things that you need to install on your system to get started in Flutter, and I've listed them here. For starters, you need to install the Flutter SDK and Dart SDK on your computer. Would be heavy on Git through the course of the program, so it's also best that you install Git now and get a hands-on on it before we start taking classes and giving tasks. Then you'd also be required to install Java, and there are other things. There are other resources that would aid in you installing these tools on your device. I'm going to share them on the Slack channel, the mobile Slack channel, so that it would be a lot easier for you to get started in Flutter. I'll be sharing videos, I'll be sharing articles, so please look out for that if you're interested in mobile development, cross-platform to be precise. So yeah, like I said, I'll be sharing those resources on the Slack channel. So I hope this gave a very clear, a somewhat clear overview of what cross-platform development is about. We, through the course of the week, I would also, alongside the resources, I would also make a short video on getting started with Flutter, as well as these resources that I mentioned earlier, so you can look out for that. So are there any questions? I'll be happy to answer them. If there are none for now, don't forget we still have the channels that are available for you to ask your questions. Let me quickly go through the YouTube chat section to see if there are questions. Oops, I can't seem to find this. Sorry, I can't seem to find the window for the YouTube. Is there anyone? Okay, seen it. Okay, so I guess there are no questions for now. Well, that's it for the presentation on all of the tracks that are available through the course of the program. We've covered front-end, back-end, design, and mobile. So I hope that all of these presentations would help in making an informed decision on what track to follow through the course of the program. We still have the remaining days in the week. We have next week so that each person can be fully settled in their track of choice. So by next week, we're hoping that every single person would have made that decision and would be a part of just one track as at next week. So please don't forget to ask your questions. Would be available to answer them.